I'm live once again. Tuesday, January 2nd, 1224. January 2nd, 2024, and it is now 8:57 p.m. And tonight we're going to discuss the book called Jesus and the Essenes by Dolores Cannon, which I have not read. I just learned about it. And so I think I may order the book and read it live on here. But what I did do is I watched 2 hours of her talking about her book, and I'm very interested. There's a part 1 and a part 2 to this series here. There it is, Jesus and the Essenes part 1, Jesus and the Essenes part 2. So it's a 2-hour listen. I listened to both hours today, and I'm very intrigued. So we're going to talk about this. It's very, very interesting. I have been watching Dolores's... Well, hey, Keto, how you doing tonight? Good to see you. I've been watching Dolores's videos and listen to her work, and I just love it. I can't get enough. And anyway, she does this this healing by hypnosis, and where people go to their past lives, and she's done it since the 1970s. You're sleepy in bed? All right. So she's talking about her book here. Now, she has passed away. Actually, she passed away a couple weeks after my mom passed away, and that was in 2014. And so God rest her soul, but her work lives on. She has literally touched millions of people. So we are going to talk about her talking about her book. I think I'm going to try to get one more book to raise this up a little bit. Here's one more. That should do it. Just seems like it's aiming downward or something. Maybe that might work. Now it's aiming upward. I can't win. What is that thing on there? There it is. Alright. Maybe I won't need as many books if I do it like that. Alright, so anyway, we're going to talk about her book. And I'm going to, I'm not really sure about her copyright stuff, so I'm going to just probably read the, I really haven't checked in. I know she does have a lot of licensed material, so I'm going to just probably read it myself, and just to be safe until I figure out what their copyright stuff is. I'm actually going to do that. There you go. Alright. Good enough, right? Now I'm going to give that a thumbs up, because that's how I keep track of if I've watched it or not. So, and I did. I watched part 1 and 2. Well, hi, Dee. How you doing tonight? Welcome to Dee. Hope you had a wonderful day. How was your Tuesday? The dogs ran into town today. I had to go to the library. My tiny town has a library. It's cute. Cute little library. But I had to go there today, so. We got out. It was not bad once you get out there. Your day was good? Awesome. Yeah, I got something done I've been putting off for a long time, so that is cool. I don't know why I put stuff off. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm not going to procrastinate things anymore. Do it and get it over with. As much as I hate something, I have to do it anyway. So, it wasn't that bad. So, all right, there you go. How about that? So we're going to talk about Dolores's book tonight, and I'm thinking about ordering it. thinking about ordering this book, and it's called Jesus and the Essenes. As a matter of fact, um, if you type up, this is probably where the original most people get this from. But if you type in Jesus Essenes, that's how you, not her name or anything, the first thing that comes up is her book. Her book, her audio book. Anyway, her book is the first thing that comes up here when you type in Jesus in the Essenes, because she wrote this book. And I was just kind of blown away today when I listened to this. At first I thought, that's weird, but then kept listening, and it was amazing. So I'm gonna probably just go through and read this thing. Now this is 57 minutes long, so I'm probably have to get on it right away if we're gonna get through it, because I got a lot of commentary to go with it, so this might even take 2 nights to go through. But we're gonna start to go through it. She's discussing her book, and this was exactly, Christmas, almost Christmas Eve 2005, as you can see down here. This is a while ago. She used to do conferences and everything. She did it right up till she passed away. Her and her daughter go around doing conferences, and then now her daughter has, taken over by herself. But there are many, 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 many people who have discovered her work over the last 4 decades and has spread this knowledge, and it's just mind-blowing and amazing to me. So anyway, I'm going to just look into the chat real quick. All right, because I can't really see. It's weird because this is in pink. I'm not sure why it's in pink like that. That's in pink. That's in pink. It's weird. Anyway, so we're going to talk about her book. Well, hey, Grace, how you doing tonight? Welcome and shalom to Grace. I hope you had a nice Minnesota day. I was saying I had to go to town today, and once I got outside, it really wasn't that bad. I dreaded going out, but once I got out there, it really wasn't that bad. It was still like 30 or something. I don't know. I got a new weather guy that I watch on YouTube. And he's better than anybody I've seen. He's got quite the following. I'll have to figure out who he is and let you know. Anyway, welcome to Grace. Hope all is well with you. In case you didn't know, if anybody's just coming in, tonight we're going to be discussing Dolores and her book, Dolores Cannon, and her book called Jesus and the Essenes. She's got a very interesting take on this. And so I think without further ado, we may get into this, because it is, as you can see, now this is 2 parts. This is 2 parts. You have part 1 and you have part 2, and each one, as you can see, is an hour long. So we're going to have to probably start into this. And like I said, I don't know really about the copyright stuff on here, so I'm just going to probably go ahead and read it. It was one of those hard to get motivated type days for me too, but then we spent the day hiking. Beautiful day. Yeah, really? Yeah, I didn't want to go out because when I was letting the dogs out, it was so cold and it's so warm inside. And I finally got dressed up and went out, and I thought, it's not really that bad once you get out there. Anyway, so I think I'm going to go ahead and read this. And this is fair use because we are using it for education and commentary purposes. So a Fair Use Act on this. So let's go ahead and start in, shall we? I will read it. Now, I'm thinking about getting the audio book or maybe reading the book itself, and we'll do that on here at some point too. So I'm waiting for the closed caption to come in here. All right. So now this is, but she's talking, in case anybody's just coming in, she's talking about, she used to do like these hypnosis and past life regressions of all these people. And so one day a girl came in and she wanted to know what her past life was. So anyway, it kind of starts there. And so I'll read it and I'll stop and make comments. So let's do this. I just don't want to miss any. She's got a... all right. All right. Just now, they have been out since the 90s, and they were published in the 90s. First came out in England, and they're now published all over the world. They're in many, many languages. These are the books that she's been written. But she did go all over the world. I mean, all over the world. But I saw her, I saw videos of her the year that she passed away in 2014. She says it's just getting too hard. These 12-hour flights are just too hard, and she was going to do things a little more closer to home. But so let's go over this, shall we? So she's talking about these books, and I think she's referring to this book, Jesus in the Essenes. So they're all over the world. They want me to do lectures on these books, and they said they have become classics because they do deal with the missing parts of Jesus's life to the parts that are not in the Bible, because I'm sure many of you out there realize that the Bible doesn't have all of the information, that it was changed. And there's a lot that has not come down to our time. And a lot of the stories that I came across in my work, I think are beautiful. And they're stories of miracles. They're stories of things that were not in the Bible, and I think should be there because they show Jesus the way he really was as a human being. That part is not really focused on with the church. But as you know, my work comes through something with hypnosis therapy and past life regressions. So the information on Jesus and the Essenes first came through about 20 years ago. And now remember, this is 2005. So now it has been, well, it was in the 80s that this happened. So now it's been longer. And it was a young girl, only in her 20s, that just wanted to see if she had a past life. And when we started doing the regressions, found out she had a wealth of material because she was an excellent something subject. This is where the person goes into the deepest possible level, which is the level that I like to work at. And at this similar level, state level, the person becomes the other personality. Totally, this life fades away. And if you were to mention something from this life, the object or a phrase or anything that we use now that was not available or known at the time period that they are reliving, they won't even know what you're talking about. And this has been quite amusing to watch. And many people, when I get them into the time periods when they don't even know some of the most common things that we're familiar with with this, because the other person, they become the other personality totally. And this light no longer exists for them at all. It just fades away. That's what I call my work, time travel. Like they're going through time tunnels, because when the person that is deep, when the person is in that deep and they go into the past and they are in those time periods and become other personality, it is definitely like time travel. And because because I'm the reporter and I love to ask questions to get the information, it's wonderful to have them in those time periods in that kind of state, because you can get all the information that the person at the time was have had available to them, and that's why I've been able to get the information. Oops. And I call myself a reporter, the researcher of lost knowledge, because a lot of the information I've written about in my books is information that is not known by the general public, already has been forgotten and lost to me. That's the greatest thing, is to get back this type of impression and present it to the world. But when the person is in that deep sleep state, they don't remember anything when they awaken, and they think they just fallen asleep. A lot of times they'll tell me, "Oh, I dozed off. You didn't get anything." And here I have 2 hours on tape, but that's because this life just clicks off, and they are all just like they're asleep as they are reliving the other life, and they have no memory when they awake. And this young girl that I began to get the Jesus material from was back in the 80s. During the 80s, when I got on valuable material and have written about in many of my books. That's when the Nostradamus material came through. And I wrote 3 books on that. And all these things I'll be talking about in the weeks and months ahead. All the information in my books, but also in the 80s is when I began my UFO researcher, and I became involved. Now, and I thought, oh man, UFOs, this is getting weird, but just hang in there, okay, because it's not what you think. And this is mind-blowing. If you listen to this whole thing, it is mind-blowing. And I'll put the link up when I get done here. All right, when I began researching, I became involved with that, with hundreds of cases dealing with UFOs and ETs. So at the same time is when the Jesus books were the first began to come through. But this young girl just came to me because she was interested in exploring and seeing if she had a past life. And we started out. You guys, this gets so deep. And a long time ago I said it seems like maybe there was a Jesus character and he had a really good thing going. He had great messages and everything. And they weren't able to kill the movement. So what they did is they rebranded the whole movement into this demigod. Jesus is a rising demigod, virgin birth kind of thing. So they killed him, and then that didn't work, and they didn't stop the movement. So they had to actually infiltrate somebody in there to turn the movement into something that it wasn't. And this is exactly what she ends up saying through this. Well, she doesn't say that, but you're going to see how. Well, she kind of says it, but anyway, it's right on the same page I've been thinking about. So anyway, so I started out ending up taking her through over 30 different past lives, and we just kept going and going backwards in time. And the wealth of information that she supplied, because she was able to become these personalities, she was able to tell us about the cultures that she was living in, all of the background, the civilization and the theology and everything about this time. So there's a great deal of information that I've uncovered through this one person alone. I've written 2 books on her. So far, I've been through enough material. I could write more, but my work keeps taking me in different directions. But and by the way, I want to say something else. In this video, she gets into even the astrologers at Jesus' birth. And Jesus wasn't really born in Bethlehem or nothing like that. He was, anyway, it's mind-blowing. She even gets to the astrologers, the magi, the astrologers. It gets really deep. Anyway, taking me in many different directions. But as she went back into this lifetime, we were taking her back in different jumps, just going backwards into time. When she came to the lifetime where she was one of the Essenes at the time of Jesus. Now a lot of people don't know who the mysterious word with the Dead Sea Scrolls were they discovered at the end of the 1940s. By the way, she's read every book on the Dead Sea Scrolls. She knows more about the Dead Sea Scrolls than most people. Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered at the end of the 1940s. In the beginning of the 50s, they made this discovery, or at Qumran, which is outside of Israel, was in Israel. It's outside of Jerusalem, off the Dead Sea, and it's a place called Qumran. And they were, they never excavated this place. There were ruins there, but they were always assumed it was Roman garrison. And it was so hot that there's a lot of, it was so hot that they just really, the archaeologists never really explored that place. And just left it alone until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves that were right around the ruins and above the Dead Sea. Now, in fact, I wonder if anyway, if you know the map, if you know Jerusalem, if you just go off to the side there, it's the top of the Dead Sea, right? And the Dead Sea goes down south. So you go straight over to the Dead Sea, and at the top of the Dead Sea is about where the Qumran caves were, and the Essenes lived. Anyway, around the ruins above the Dead Sea, and most of you probably know the story of the shepherd boy who was following his goat, looking for the goat, and whenever the goat got in, and one of the goats got into one of the caves, and he was the one who found the scrolls that were hidden in these huge pottery jars. Now, I've heard this story, I've read this story. There was a shepherd boy who, the shepherd boy, and he lost the sheep, or actually it was a goat. And so he was searching the caves, and in order to, what he would do is throw a rock into the cave. And if the goat was in there, maybe the goat would make a noise. So he's throwing rocks into these little caves, and when he threw a rock into one of the caves, he heard bottles breaking. So we went in to see what that noise was, and it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyway, so they were hidden in these huge pottery jars. Eventually, over time, and I think, if I remember right, I think they were hidden there during the fall of Jerusalem, but I'm not sure. As they found out about them, the scientists that began accumulating all these records, and they're calling it the greatest discovery in history of man, because it was all the history of, especially of the Bible, going all through way back. She said it was the original versions of all the books of the Bible except one or two. Only that were anyway. That's what the Dead Sea Scrolls was. They're all originals from the Old Testament. So they're all the originals, and unmessed with. And they said it was the originals of the versions of all the books to the Bible, except I think one or two, the only ones that were not in there. Plus, also in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a lot of the history of the times and stories of the Essenes, who were the community there at Qumran. And they were the ones who broke and copied a lot of these scrolls. But at the time, it was supposed to be the greatest discovery in the history of man. But then what happened? After a few years, all of a sudden it disappeared again, almost as though it was all pushed back into the caves. Because if I found out the theologians, because I found out the theologians didn't want this information out to get out to the people, because it was one of the things it was showing was that there was a Christianity before Christ, and it didn't all begin with him. A lot of it did start with this, but a lot of it did start with the Essene community. He has seen Qumran, and it was a secret. The Qumran was a secret school, a mystery school. You guys, this makes so much sense because through the whole New Testament, you'll see that there's hidden knowledge, hidden, right? And this is hidden. It's not for everybody, remember? And I'm really glad that we spent thousands of live streams literally every night studying the Bible, because man, this is just popping out all kinds of things, thoughts where I know exactly what they're talking about. So schools, all types of mystery and knowledge were taught to just a select few of people that were selected for students. It was a very secret place. And even during those days in Israel, even the King Herod were afraid of these people because they had all of these secrets, and they didn't know what other knowledge they had, but I found that a lot of their knowledge came from the Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis. Now, I've been studying that too, because of many of these were survivors and descendants of the people from Atlantis. And they had a great deal of information and knowledge that they kept and they maintained. They maintained it and wrote about it and did the copying of the scrolls. And this is why they buried them in the caves. This was at the time of about 69 AD, the fall of Jerusalem. And whenever the Romans came in and they were destroying the whole area, and they destroyed Jerusalem at that time. So they buried the scrolls to try to save them, but it ended up at the end then that the Qumran and the Essenes were overrun, and a lot of them were murdered, but many of them died because they didn't want to reveal their information. They committed suicide because they didn't want the Romans to have access to the information, which was highly secret. Well, these were the Essenes and their connection with the Dead Sea Scrolls. But on the original board, the people who were investigating the Dead Sea Scrolls and doing the translation there were many theologians. And they're the ones that decided to just bury all the information again, because they said, I wish they would go away and come back in another generation. They didn't know how to explain that or their followers that where all this information was coming from, because it was supposed to, it was not the way the Bible said it was, and the information I found went along exactly with the information that I was getting from the work. I think I've said before in the beginning, reincarnation was the basis of every religion in the world, including the early Christian church. Reincarnation was a very important basic concept, because it made so much sense. And it was only after the death of Christ, it was old, like 500 years, I believe it was AD, 500 AD, when they had, 500 AD, when they had the council, we're talking about the Council of Nicaea. This is where we know that they messed with the books, decide what was going to be in the Bible, and they accumulated all of the records, the stories, like the books and everything that they could find, and decided to put the Bible together at that time. And they're the ones that decided to take everything out and not included that dealt with the rebirth or the theory of reincarnation. Isn't that something? But what they did put in there is the born again. You got to be born again. You see how they did the old switcheroo? So they took out everything that has to do with rebirth and the theory of reincarnation. And that's why all these other religions still have the reincarnation. Because they didn't have the Catholic Council of Nicaea pulling it all out, hiding it from you. But all the other religions still have it. You know what I mean? And it, like I said, even the Jewish people are admitting that, yeah, they believed in it all along. They just didn't want to say so. And why didn't they want to say so? Because maybe they're the ones that, hid this stuff from us. And there were many, many stories that were omitted that belonged in there with the life of Jesus and the mystic years, and a lot of that was not included after the writing of the Bible. When they're the ones that decided this is what we will say Jesus said, etc., etc. And that's exactly what I said a long time ago. Jesus had probably a really good message, but somehow it didn't go with their plan. So they had to put the kibosh on Jesus. And after they killed him, the movement kept going. And so they couldn't stop the movement. So they had to change the movement into something completely different. And that's what they did. Is what we will say Jesus said. We'll change everything and we'll say Jesus said this instead. And this is what they did. Many people think the Bible was written by the hands of God. It was not. It was written by the hands of men at the Fifth Council in the 5th century, when they had these meetings to decide all this. After the Bible was finally put together, many more stories and records began to come forth. The thousands and thousands of these that the people went through at the time to decide how to put the Bible, many more came through many more years later and said, these need to be put in the Bible. But they said, no, sorry, it's already been written and there's nothing we can do about it. No. So people were saying, you can't just give everybody this in the Bible. What about all this other stuff we have about Jesus and the Essenes and the movement? And like I said, I knew this years ago that the movement was called the Way, because it even says in the New Testament, I just saw it the other day, they went against the followers of the Way. That's what they were, the followers of the Way. They're called the Way. Anyway, so they're saying there's nothing we can do about it. It's already, when people started to say, hey, wait a minute, when people started seeing this Bible that they came out with, and they were complaining, hey, but we're missing all this stuff. You took out all this stuff. And they said, well, it's too late. We already wrote it. Nothing we can do about it. But it was all intentional. So they said, oh, nothing we can do about it. She said, I'm not making all this up, because these are official records that anyone can find if they go and do the research about the writing of the Bible and the history of the Bible. So then, Mishan, I found that the Essenes found and wrote about the residency scrolls. Go back to the time before these were eliminated from the writing of the Bible. But this young girl that I went back to the time when she was in the scene did not have much education, because she was like in her 20s, and she had finished high school and she went directly into the army just to learn the occupation. By the way, and this girl who's in her 20s getting this past life, she's doing her past life. She was a man in the Essenes, okay? So she wasn't a woman back then. When they went back further, they went all the way back, each one of her lives. Well, when they got to the time of Jesus, finds out she was a man that was that watched Jesus in this. Anyway, and you don't have to believe it, but I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of truth coming out of here that makes sense. Into the army. So she went directly into the army just to learn an occupation, but she had never been out of this country. She didn't have higher education at all, so the information that came through was astounding. Okay, so she's talking about the actual girl. The girl's in her 20s. She's the one that's in school. She's just a young girl. She's going to school. She doesn't know anything about the Essenes. She doesn't know anything about this past life stuff. And the girl doesn't know anything about, this history of Jesus and the lost Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The young girl doesn't know anything about this. So when she's telling you all this, she's under hypnosis, and in her waking life, she wouldn't know anything about this. So anyway, the information that come through was astounding, because I don't think even an anthropologist would be able to come up with the type of things that she talked about, and that I've included in the various books that I've written about her. When I had done all of my sessions and decided to write the book Jesus of the Essenes, and had seen, I went to rabbis and asked questions, because there was a great deal of cultural information in there, was a lot of theological information, thusly dealing with the Torah, which was the first 5 books of the Bible. And I wanted to get information on this. Of course, I couldn't tell the rabbis why I wanted the information, but I began asking them questions. And the one looked at me and he said, "Where are you getting this information? Should we haven't even," he says, "we haven't even spoken about these things in 2,000 years." So she had access to information that no one at this time knows. So that dispels the theory that they are taking it, making up the whole cloth, or that they taking it from their mind or their own mind, because this was lost information. And get this. And she even spoke in Aramaic, which she was under too. This all reminds me. So when you're under hypnosis and you're in a past life, like this girl in her 20s, an American, she's in her past life and she's back in Jesus' time. She can actually speak the language. And that reminds me, there's going to be a lot of stuff in here you're going to hear that we just went over in the Great Commission. And what did Jesus say in the Great Commission? You're going to be able to speak languages that you've never spoken before. That's called speaking in tongues. And you're doing it under hypnosis. You know what I mean? So this girl is literally speaking in tongues that she doesn't know. She's speaking a language that she doesn't know. So she's speaking in Aramaic. When she was speaking in Aramaic also when she was under too. And the theory, these are coming from someone else, was lost information that has not been known in 2,000 years. But in the life that she went into, she was an Essene teacher. And she was a male teacher of the Torah. And this is the book of the law. I became very educated during this work because I had no knowledge of the book of the Torah, Xerxes' law, and I didn't even know any knowledge. A lot of questions I asked when I was doing the book all may seem naive to some people, but I didn't have any background. I took it, said, whatever you're doing, this kind of work, you're doing the research while you're working on the project. After you get all the information, then you do the research, because you can't be influenced by that way. And this is a good point. So it's like when she, if she wants to check out this girl's story, you hear the story first and then you go check the facts. Because if you check the facts first and then listen to the girl's story, you might, in your mind, you might be influenced by stuff you already know. Let's just try to say it. And that way, I read until I had already and had the book was already pretty much written before I went to do the research. So she already wrote her account of this girl under hypnosis and being in a scene with Jesus. And so then she went and checked out to see if, the facts match. So anyway, I went to do the research to flush it out, but she was in a scene teacher, a master of the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible dealing with the Jewish law. And the amazing thing was she was at Qumran as a teacher during the time that Jesus and John the Baptist were students there. So she was a teacher of the law to Jesus and John the Baptist. And this mystery school, as I said, many people came, but they were only certain people that were allowed to come because they were being taught secret information, and they had different masters and taught them different subjects. They were masters of mathematics, of astrology, and astronomy, and every type of field you could imagine. And she was the master of the Torah. So when Jesus and John the Baptist were students there, they had to learn everything that was being taught. And this was all began when they were children. And they said it was amazing that Jesus had the ability to absorb information so quickly that he learned it very fast. He learned it very fast and was able to learn everything that was taught to him. There, many students came and just focused on one subject for as long as 5 years, but he was able to absorb everything and learn it all in just a fraction of the time it should have taken. I think one thing is important for me to bring out because we were so close to Christmas. In the story that she gave us, the Star of Bethlehem, it was one of the most beautiful sessions I've ever had. I could feel the awe and the wonder as this girl was reliving the life of the man witnessed, just called what we call the Star of Bethlehem. And she went into it without being led there. I just told her to go forward to an important day. And she was standing in the hillside outside the Qumran on the cliffs, watching the sky, and all of the others were out there too. The Essenes, because they said that they knew this was the most important. Now, I'm just going to stop here. So in the Gospel of Matthew, only Luke and Matthew have the, and I think this is interesting because it's not the original Gospel is Mark, and the first one and the last John. Neither one of those Gospels has anything about the birth of Jesus, because and obviously the New Testament has a different Messiah than the Old Testament, right? We've gone over that ad nauseum. So the Old Testament, we show you what the Old Testament, what they're saying is who the Messiah is going to be. But the New Testament has a completely different spin on what the Messiah is. Not just that it's Jesus, but what they got, like a different job description for the New Testament than the Old Testament on the Messiah. And what I think is interesting here is they're going to go into the Star of Bethlehem. Now, she will later tell you that they don't know where he was born. It's probably more, it wasn't in Bethlehem, let's put it that way. But it sounded good. And in fact, Bethlehem isn't even Bethlehem. Bethlehem used to be in a different place. The Bethlehem that we know now is not the Bethlehem of the Bible. Which makes a lot of sense because if you looked on a Google map, there's really nothing there. I mean, it's just anyway. So, this seems because they knew that this was now they're going to go over the star. And it's not one star, you guys. It's 4 different stars. This seems because they said they knew this was the most important night. It was the night of the coming of the Messiah. They had studied astrology to a great degree, and they had calculated the charts, and they knew about when the birth of Jesus was to occur. They had a good idea, and they were watching on the hills that night. And the man, we call him, his name was Sudai. That was the same teacher Sudai said, according to the legend, his father had told him that on the night when Jesus would be born, it would be the coming together of before. And what he meant, there would be 4 stars coming together. Each one would be coming from a different part of the sky. Different 4 parts of the sky, and they would merge in that area. And she said, as she watched them, the 4 stars came together and they merged into one great burst. They formed a circle. So the 4 stars came and it formed a circle, and they merged in one great beautiful light. And from that light, she saw a beam of light shoot down towards the earth. And she said, in that light, he is born. And they were near Bethlehem. And they knew that that was where he was going to be born. And now we have found that Bethlehem today is not the actual place that Jesus was born. No one really knows where the place was in those days. No one knows where the original Bethlehem was. And Bethlehem, remember, means Bethel, and Ham is the house of bread. I'm pretty sure it means house of bread. So there's probably meant several of them. The original Bethlehem was one that they have today, was chosen as to be the place of the birth, but it was not. Is not the real place. No one knows where the real place was, but they said as the light shot down, that was when he was told to be born. It was to be near Bethlehem. So they watched this and said that the energy was tremendous, just like the energy was cursing all around them, and the air was vibrant, and it was one of the most exciting things that they had ever seen, and were able to pick it up by the way her voice carried all this emotion. By the way, her voice carried all this emotion as she was watching this. She said, to think that I would be alive. Just think I would be alive to see such a wonderful event as this. She never thought it would be possible, but to me, that does not sound like stars, normal stars. I think the people who wrote the Bible describes it the best way they could, but it doesn't really sound like a normal star. She said the light remained in the sky and was visible during the day as well as the night. And we've talked about this before. If these wise men, the magi, the magicians, astrologers, if they're following the star, what the heck? They only have to travel at night? I mean, so you have to travel at night. If you're following a star, that makes no sense. You would have to travel, and it took 2 years to walk across, or whatever. They're on foot. So it took, Jesus is supposed to be 2 years old by the time they show up. So it took them like 2 years to walk across this country. So are you telling me that they had to travel every night at night where you couldn't walk and see? No. What she's saying is that this star was visible during the daytime as well as the night, which would make more sense. Anyway, it could be seen everywhere, and there was a lot of talk at the time. They knew about novas and exploding stars, and they said it was not that. It was not a new star in the sky, and they had no idea what it was, because after a month or so, it disappeared again. I did the research. I found that some people think maybe the conjunction of the stars, and I found that there were two conjunctions in that part of the world during the time period that we think Jesus was born, but both of these conjunctions were only stars that came together. A conjunction is when three normal planets and stars in the sky happen to be in the same position. So it might look like they came together at one time. If people do the astrology charts, will know this, and it's called a conjunction. But did it the stars move again in another day or so? By this could abandon some of what we say was conjunction, but only conjunctions on the record are three, not four. Besides, the light was so bright, he said, whenever they came together, it was like the light of the day. He could see the light all around them, and it was very powerful light to me. That does not sound very normal. For stars coming together, in the book, I leave it up to your own conclusions what you think it is. But it is profound, very much like UFOs could have been involved, and that's very possible because in one of my other books, I found Hey! It's enough. Man, I hate when he does that. Oh my gosh. All right. He just does it louder and louder and louder. And anyway. All right. Like UFOs have been involved in. That's very possible because in one of my other books, I found living people in these days describing the people who came out of the UFOs as angels and messengers who came to them to give messages and news. In my book, Legacy from the Stars, I had one case where the people were outside in our desert community and they saw a UFO skimming it, and didn't call it that, but saw this disc skimming across the desert floor, and it landed right where they were standing. And they said he came quite often, and when the beings would come out of the ship, they would be glowing white beings, and they came out on smaller discs, standing on the smaller discs, so their feet would not touch the surface of the earth. They said they could not touch the surface of the earth. They skimmed across to them. And in that story, the Legacy from the Stars, they told the people of the Messiah was being born at that time. And it was quite a ways from where they were. So I've many stories where our UFOs and their people that are inside the UFOs are treated as messengers and angels. And when I take people back in those Bible times, so it's very possible, but I'll leave it up to your own speculation. So she's saying that whenever anybody's in this early first century, they have mentioned these disc things that come down. Now, I started thinking, okay, this is getting weird. She's talking about UFOs and stuff, but just to keep listening. Because I think the government's telling us UFOs are one thing when they're really something else. They want us afraid of these things or whatever. But anyway, and she kind of gets into some of this like stuff later. So take people back to those Bible times. So it's very possible, but I'll leave it up to your own speculation, whether the Star of Bethlehem was actually for UFO lights coming together or not. But to me, it certainly sounded like that could have been what it was. And when Jesus was a student at Qumran, they said there were a spacecraft coming and going that had beings in them, and were very pleased with the Essenes because the way they preserving the knowledge they had come down so long ago. This means that Jesus also saw these beings and had probably had interaction with them. but was considered quite normal at the time. And you know what I do want to say too? I don't know if she's mentioned, she did kind of mention it, touched on it a little bit. I don't know if she's going to touch on it anymore, but the teachers that were teaching Jesus and other people, it is kind of funny because they do mention that, they do mention in the Gospels that even as a child, and they did mention, she mentioned this earlier, but even as a child, Jesus could question the teachers like he was an adult. They're astonished by his knowledge. And that's really what she said, that the teachers were even astonished by his knowledge. So branching off into many parts of my work. But I did include them in the book Jesus and the Essenes because I wanted people to know that these things were accepted during that time. So UFOs were accepted at that time. All right, in the book of Jesus and the Essenes, after the Star of Bethlehem, I took her forward at the time, and I began asking more questions about the star, and that's when she said that it remained in the sky for 2 months. And she talked about the Magi, and the Magi were astrologers in the Bible. It calls them wise men, but they were astrologers, and they had also seen the same chart that they had seen. Dia seems to know that on this time, in a certain time period, is when the Messiah would be born, so that all knew from the charts about where it was going to be. And you know what? I would not be surprised at all if whoever wrote the Bible is maybe they wrote, you know what I just heard, and Grace watches that channel. She might have been the one to, but there's a channel, and the guy was just talking about, oh wait, I forgot to stop that thing. Hold on a second. The guy was talking about how the Old Testament, we're taught to say it's 4,000 years old, but actually, in all actuality, there's no proof that that Bible was written any earlier than really not long before the New Testament. So the Old Testament, we don't have proof it goes back 4,000 years. We only have proof it goes back as far as, I don't know, about when the New Testament got written. You know how they got that 1,000 years missing? From 1000 BC to 2000, AD to 2000 AD. Anyway, there's 1,000 years missing. Anyway, the time don't make sense. And what if they put in the Bible a different type of Messiah? Maybe they had a Messiah that's going to do other things. Maybe something, sit on the throne of Israel and rule the whole world. Well, they want you to think that that's what the Messiah is going to do. Sit on the throne and rule the whole world, because that's going to work out good for them, the ones that wrote it. But what if the Messiah was here to bring this knowledge to us, this hidden knowledge? Well, then you would have to redefine what the Messiah is. Well, he's not going to be somebody who is going to bring us this great hidden knowledge. He is going to be somebody who rules the world. Anyway, it was going to be, and she said, each wise man. Oh, wait. All right. All right. So they knew from the charts about where it was going to be. And she said each wise man, or each magi, astrologer, followed one of the lights, one of the stars. And they were to meet where they were all coming together. And so they came from different parts of the country. And there was supposed to have been, for our jump down to us, 3 wise men. What we're told is that there's 3 wise men, right? We've always been told there's 3 wise. Well, no, we haven't even been told there's 3 wise men. Actually, in the Bible, it doesn't tell you how many wise men. But in your church plays, they're going to have 3 wise men. In the pictures, they're going to be 3 wise men, etc. Oh, hold on a second. I got to answer a message. Um, all right. A second. I need to write something. Somebody. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. All right. Let me check out your. I haven't been back in the chat, so let me get back in the chat. UFOs are prominent in some of the oldest paintings and artworks. Chris Bledsoe has seen many orbs. He says they are angels. Scripture. Well, yeah, you can tell. And there is a difference between dust balls in videos and orbs. But if it is a real orb, yeah, people usually think it's some kind of a spirit. Scripture says Hilkiah, the high priest, rewrote the book of the law in his time. Really? And you know what? Yeah, that makes sense. They're going to rewrite it. They're going to rewrite it. All right. So they came together. So they came from different parts of the country, the stars that were coming together. So each wise man, oops, look up. Each wise man or each magi followed one of the lights, one of the stars, and they were to meet where they all came together. And so they came from different parts of the country, and there was supposed to have been 4. You know, our church told us that there was only 3 wise men, but she said there was supposed to be 4, but for one of them that would, wait a second. Oh my goodness, hold on a second. This thing's hard to keep up. She said there was supposed to have been for one of them that would follow each one of these stars. And you know, this time of year, we do hear the stories of the 4th wise man. There have been some stories on TV saying that they think there might have been a 4th wise man, according to what Saudi is telling me. At the time of the Essenes, they knew there was supposed to be an enforcement, and no one knew what happened to. No, they knew that there was, okay, not enforcement. They knew that there was supposed to be a 4th one. So back then they knew that there was supposed to be 4 stars that came together. Each astrologer was going to follow their star, and then all 4 of them were going to come together, and that's where they're going to find them. Okay, so they're telling me at the time, the Essenes knew that there was supposed to be a 4th one. And no one knew what happened to him because he didn't make it to the meeting point with the other 3. But the other 3 all gathered up there and decided what they were going to do from there. And the story of going to the palace, which is the temple in Jerusalem, going to the palace looking for the new baby was true because they didn't know where else to go. Wait a second. Now they're saying this story is true. Hold on a second. This thing keeps popping up and covering the letters. So they were going to decide what they're going to do from there. So the story of going to the palace looking for the new baby was true because they didn't know where else to go. All of that part was true. The killing of the babies there are many parts are true of the Bible, And then according to her, and where other stories went off different directions, because I think that was very fitting right now as we're so close to Christmas to tell what she said the actual Star of Bethlehem, which is still remains a mystery even with her telling of it. And the 4 wise men that came looking for the baby, now when she came, or now when she was at Eska Qumran, she did see the baby. Whenever all Mary and Joseph, oh, and get this, they're going to get into who Joseph was. Joseph of Arimathea. We've heard about him, right? Wasn't he the one, the rich man that gave Jesus the tomb, and the rich man that came with Nicodemus with the spices and one of the anyway, he shows up as the rich guy in the stories, remember? Well, he was one of the Essenes, and he was one of the richest guys in the world. Whenever all Mary and Joseph came to flee, they were fleeing with the killing of the babies of Herod and John the Baptist and the myrrh. And there's another story about Elizabeth and John the Baptist. And Zacharias, I know in the beginning when I started this information, I thought I would be able to find all the verification in the Bible. I thought all I had to do was check the Bible in my research of it and find all my answers there. Well, that wasn't true. I didn't even find half the answers there. I tried, but the thing I found a whole lot more from my own work that filled in the gaps. There were just too many gaps in the story, in the whole story. There's another book that I found a lot more information that filled in all the gaps. The Aquarian Gospel, which is a very old book. The Aquarian Gospel filled in a lot of the parts that I thought that should have been put in the Bible, right? They were going to Egypt. They had to flee to get away from the soldiers that were all looking for the babies because the sense. Oh, and get this. This is where she ties together the senses. So she's saying the whole reason that there was a census. Remember, one of the Gospels, they had to, I think it was Luke, they had to go. Anyway, they had to go for the census, right? That brings them into Bethlehem. How are we going to get it? Well, let's just say that there's a census. Well, she's saying that the reason for the census, the local census, was because they're looking for the parents in this baby. Right, that was the reason for the census. Idea when the children were born, pretty much able to find them. So Mary and Joseph took the baby and were fleeing. Well, where else? Where else are they going to go? Mary and Joseph were Essenes, and they were taught at Qumran, and they went to the school there. So naturally, when it came time to flee, they came and stopped at the Qumran on their way to Egypt. And it was at that time that the city was able to see the baby for the first time, and he said it was not any normal baby that he had ever seen. He said it didn't cry. It was very quiet. And he said he had the most beautiful eyes. Now, get this. You know how you see the pictures of Jesus with blue eyes? You think, well, that was that Pope's nephew or whatever. What did they say his name was? I forgot. But anyway, they're saying that these Essenes, these people that lived at the Qumran caves up there, these Essenes had red hair, bright red hair, and blue eyes. And I think is interesting about this, that's how they described David, King David. They said King David, they called him Ruddy, R-U-D-D-Y, because he was red. Red face, red hair. So it is funny that, and she's even going to mention that, we think of people in the Middle East as being dark skin and dark hair, but they weren't back then. The migration from other countries into Israel is what changed their hair and skin color. to dark. But back then, we're talking bright red hair, blue eyes. Anyway, that's what they're saying. The Essenes had red hair, pale skin, and blue eyes. Anyway, he said he had the most, which I think is funny because there's a little bit of truth in those pictures of Jesus with blue eyes. If this is true, if he really did have blue eyes, it's just like, anyway. He said that he had the most beautiful eyes. He said it as though the eyes could see beyond the world. And he was so impressed by seeing this young baby Jesus. But he didn't know that after they went to Egypt and came back, that he was going to be the teacher of Jesus. So this happened whenever they brought the children back, and John the Baptist joined them. They were just young boys at the time, and Sodi was teaching both of them. And I think I'm going to stop here because, like I said, this is probably going to take 2 hours to go through this because I'm commenting. So we are at 34 minutes in. I think I'm going to stop here because I just looked. We're at 1 hour and 11 minutes in. So this would be way over 2 hours if I kept going. I figured it was going to be like this. So we're going to do part 2 tomorrow night. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. We're going to... yeah, we're going to have to do the other part tomorrow because we've probably got a whole hour left. We're about halfway through. So anyway, we're going to stop. I'm going to get back into the chat and... Chris Bledsoe has seen many orbs. He says they are angels. Scripture says Hilkiah the priest. Okay. I did catch up. There's the comments over there. All right. So I'm going to say good night. And we're just going to pick up this tomorrow, part 2. I have to remember where I left off. All right. I find it interesting, quite interesting. Thank you. Well, thank you, Grace, for being in here. And D. And Cheeto Keto. Good to see you tonight, Cheeto. Or Cheeto. Good night to Cheeto. Yeah, it is interesting. Now, in order to listen to stuff like this, you have to really put your preconceived notions and your preconceived notions and your all your other stuff aside and have an open mind. And then when it gets all done, hear the whole thing. And when it gets done, then you can make up your decision. I have a suggestion for your future live stream. I'll text you later. All right, yeah, give me a text, Grace. Yeah, you have to set aside your biases and you have to set aside what you've been taught. Because if you haven't noticed by now, we have been taught a lot of lies. And the truth, when the truth is out there, it gets ridiculed. They will ridicule the truth and make it sound stupid. So then you'll believe the lies. Yeah, you have to set aside your biases. That's right. Well, thank you, Grace. I look forward to your text. And anyway, oops, got a cat here. I didn't see him. I love you too, Grace. Thanks for coming in. Thanks to everybody. All right, love, prayers, blessings to you too. All right, peace. Have a great rest of the evening. Have a great day. If you're listening on the replay, thanks for listening on the replay. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for... Uh-oh. What just happened? Oh. Whew. Okay. That's weird. I thought I disconnected accidentally. All right. Well, I'm going to disconnect anyway. So anyway, peace, love, blessings, everybody. You too. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you tomorrow night. We're going to finish this tomorrow. And anyway, peace. Yeah, still paging Chasey and Sanders sleepover. Okay, that's right. I've got all these cots here, these folding cots, ready to go for a sleepover. I got sleeping bags, sleeping cots. Come on, come for the sleepover. All right, good night, everybody. Peace out. Good night.